Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be doing something different. I mean, I've done a couple of response videos before, but we are doing a response video to one, something that was shared on the Discord, and two, to somebody that I've not actually done a response to in any way before, and is also not actually like in the writing community of sorts or in the book community of sorts, but she's talking about a topic that I've seen go around that I actually have a lot of thoughts on, especially considering I have my own set of beautiful characters, and it gives me a reason to talk more about my characters that aren't even just the gorgeous ones like Michi, but you've also got, the demure ones like Marcella. You've got the hellions like Daisy, which is Monty's. You've got the sweet girls that are also the strippers like Marky. You've got the tomboy like Joey, who is insanely skinny because, her diet is cigarettes and stale pizza. And you got Billy, who is a bush cat girl, basically. And I will talk about my beautiful women any opportunity that I get. But I also want to talk about this issue because I think there's some truth here and some hyperfixation here. But that's why I want to have the discussion, because I want to present it to you guys, give another, just some more thoughts and like maybe some interaction, because the political discourse side of things and the creative side of things, it always seems like there's commentary from the political side into the creative side, but not actually talking to creative people while complaining about seeing what's in the creative sphere. So maybe it's a way to get some cross-sectioning. Anyway, I feel like I should also start out by saying I don't have anything against Sydney. I just wanted to opine on the subject with her to sort of share some more insight into at least what I see from the creative side and as a creative person, and also show off my characters, Monty's characters, because they're gorgeous. Okay, what can I say? They're gorgeous. They're gorgeous in different ways. Okay, you'll see what I mean when I start talking about it. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Lamai, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story, and on the first Monday video of the month, we read those short stories together, at least some of them, because you guys are incredibly creative. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit your first chapter and your cover page, they'll be read here on the channel, or it'll be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work, people that are looking for your genre, your story, because you put the work in. It's time to find those readers. That's the third thing is if you would like to check out any of my books, they are available anywhere that you get books, including the library if you request them. And the third Bodymore book comes out at the end of this month. Looking forward to you guys reading it and telling me what you think, completing Joey's story. I'm happy for her. Honestly, I'm glad that she gets the ending that she gets. I'm happy for her, and I'm so happy with what I discovered when writing the series. I want to say that it means the most to me, but every single thing that I write has so much meaning behind like why the characters are the way they are. And like if you get me started talking about the background on the Westies or the background in the Easties and how those families and those characters are put together, like it's going to be incredible. The Westies is going to be incredible, you guys. I can't even begin to tell you. It's going to engulf, it's going to encompass the American spirit, the Western spirit, the spirit of family and love, and all of these different relationships, like with Bill and Maybelle, Tommy and Marcella, Billy and Ambrose, and Ike and Daisy, and just, it's going to be so good. I can't wait to write it, and you're going to get chills at the end of it. I'm already getting chills with the idea of how it's going to end. I'm so excited. Anyway, so that's everything. That's that. And now we can get into the video. So we're going to be playing Sydney's video. I'll be pausing it to opine and giving some thoughts, and then I'll have some final thoughts if I don't find someplace in the response to make it work. But I felt like this was a good follow-up, especially since I think it was last week or the week before that I did a video on relatability and the idea that people, especially in the writing community, because it's funny, I see people talking in movies and television, comics, and in politics about stuff that we've been seeing in the writing community for a very long time, because stuff hits the literary community, it feels like, at least to me, and I'm blinded by the perspective that I have in the industries that I'm touching. But I feel like I see stuff happening in the writing industry that then goes on to hit other industries. Like Race Fail happened back in 2007, 2008, and that's when it all started with a live journal account that said, hey, if you're going to write somebody outside of your race, my recommendations for writing that character is 1, treat them like a real person, and 2, do research. And somehow that was offensive to somebody, and it started this whole big thing that ended up crashing down the sci-fi fantasy genre and kind of screwing things around within the association of sci-fi fantasy to talk about and have a reckoning with race relation issues. And that was back in the late 2000s because of live journals. And then it's happened in the romance community in 2018, 19, when they had the RWA shit show. They've got stuff going like this in the horror community, which I've somewhat covered on this channel, like with stuff with Matt Shaw and Hannah Hugh. And so it's touching a lot of communities, and it's been touching a lot of communities. And obviously there was Gamergate with the journalists. And also if you look at the comments that I've made about reviews here, and even just readers and authors putting pressure on friends and family or reviewers to give them higher ratings. But then you've also got the reviewers that are putting pressure or attacking reviewer or books and authors that they think that they can control. And so anyway, it's just a huge big mess. So anyway, I feel like I've seen a lot of the comments that have to do with storytelling specifically hit the writing community before it hits the mainstream, and then other people are talking about it. So I wanted to talk about some of this character stuff. And as we get into it, it's talking about relatability. And like I said in my video a couple weeks ago, I don't think anybody is meaner to female characters than other females who are partaking in that genre, because you'll have women that insult other women for just being different. It's always boiled down to a trope. It's constantly, let me rephrase that always, because always, infinitives are never correct. But it's constantly boiled down to a trope where a woman can be a more complex character, but then she fits into a trope, and that's fine. Everybody fits into a trope of some kind. I fit into a number of tropes, honestly, but a person is more than the tropes that they fit into. However, there are some readers or some consumers who boil everything down to their trope, or the creators who build off of a trope, and that's all that the characters are, or they treat them like that's all that the characters are. There are people that'll look at like Michi, which I'm going to bring up Michi Mori now and probably later as well, who is my character. She's a cabaret girl. She is absolutely drop dead bombshell gorgeous, and she is supposed to be. It's part of her story. It's part of the character that she is built as, and she's also a cabaret girl, so she freaking better be gorgeous. But the level of her beauty has also affected her relationships with other people. It's affected the job that she got. It's even affected the reason why she got the job. Not just because she's beautiful, but why she pursued that job. It also affects her self-esteem, because you would think that maybe somebody that gorgeous wouldn't have low self-esteem, but she meets the man of her dreams, or at least the guy that she is so head over heels for, that she doesn't think she's good enough because she thinks she's too stupid for him. And that has a relationship with Shigemi, who is absolutely gorgeous, beautiful in a completely different way than Michi. And you have these two very beautiful women, Shigemi and Michi, who are best friends, and they're beautiful in very different ways. But Shigemi still looks at Michi and is intimidated by the way that Michi looks. And Michi looks at Shigemi and can't understand how Shigemi doesn't see how beautiful she is. But both of these women are gorgeous, just in very different ways. Anyway, women tend to be the meanest to other women because they boil them down to stereotypes. And if you're I've constantly seen it in the writing community specifically. Somebody will have to tell me in other communities, where if it's a man writing a woman, then you'll get female reviewers or female readers that dunk on the man, especially if he's a white man, which I disagree with every single kind of critique that boils down to somebody's immutable or personal characteristics. Like if you make a judgment on somebody because of their religion, that's frankly wrong. It's not helpful, but you can write your reviews however you want to write. But it's bigotry when I'm listening to somebody talk and they say, this author should not be writing women because, oh, look, it's just a straight white male. Look, you're talking about the sexualization of a female character, and then you're dissing the author for immutable characteristics. What happens if I write a sexualized female character? Does Michi count as a sexualized female character when she wears tube dresses that show off her breasts and that her entire job is pleasing men and making men feel special and talking to men? Like, am I gonna get dragged for that, or is it okay because I'm doing it and I'm a woman? So, like, this comes up a lot with targeting people based on demographics and then attacking people based on it, instead of just accepting a character for what it is and then looking as to whether or not that character was done well. And then boiling people down to, well, that's not an acceptable stereotype. Like, oh, you've made that character super sexual. Well, that's not an acceptable stereotype. Oh, you've made that character super innocent. Well, that's not an acceptable stereotype. Oh, well, you've made your character a good wife. Well, that's not an acceptable stereotype. I'm already anticipating people taking different issues with different characters in the Westies if they want to boil them down to stereotypes, because Marcella is head over heels in love with Tommy. And she's born and raised basically to be a wife for somebody, because her dad was always going to have her basically be sold off for a business deal. And so she's a very interior girl, and she's not kind of in a cage. If you watch my art video, you'll hear me talk about Marcella more in that. But she's just a cute, very attractive girl, very pure girl, very locked into her house because she doesn't have very much exterior experience. And she runs away with the man of her dreams, and she knows how to use a shotgun. Like, her dad is a gun manufacturer, so she knows how to defend herself. But she runs away with him, and Tommy is her leadership. Like, she wants him to be her leadership, and she follows him, and then she has his baby, and that's all that she wants to do, is she wants to be his wife. And that's all that she ever wanted to do. If you talk to her in the first chapter of the prologue of the Westies, she wants to marry a man that she loves. Like, that's her goal. And that's also Michi's goal, ironically, is Michi wants a family, because when Michi was 4, her parents got into a car accident, and so she never had any siblings. She was raised by her grandparents. And so, like, every person that she met, it's one of the things that sort of drove the way that she was social, other than the fact that she was just social, is like every person she met, she sort of inducted into her personal family, wanted to become friends with them so that she could, that's a sister, that's a brother, that's an uncle, and that's just how she is, because she really wants that family. And so then she meets Kaede, and he's going to give her like 5 children, and that's all that she's ever wanted, is to get married to the man that she's going to have a family with. And so that can also be turned into a stereotype. You've got Billy, who is this bush cat of a girl raised separate from society and doesn't really have the same social norms. Like, she will wear her shirt hanging open because she's just lived in the woods with her brothers. Nothing inappropriate, because they just in danger, so they've seen each other naked because they bathe in the river. And it's nothing of, it is what it is. She doesn't really have the mannerisms of a high society woman. Then you have Daisy, who is a higher society woman. Not as high society as Marcella, but she's gotten into a fist fight over her dress getting made dirty on purpose by these other girls. So you could boil her down to not like other girls because she doesn't necessarily fit in with her group. But then you could also do something to Billy for not fitting in either. The point being, you can boil everything down into a stereotype. Anyway, let's get into the video so that we can start this conversation and see where some of the similarities and where I think there might be blind spots, or where I might be blind, and we can go into this together. At the very least, I thought that it would be an interesting cross-examination as somebody in the creative field. I don't know what Sydney Watson's experiences are, or with the creative field, with creative writing, but having been to graduate school for creative writing, to theater for and being a published author with awards, I figured it would be a great way to sort of cross-pollinate and get different ideas and different perspectives on what is essentially the creative field. Also, I play video games, so, you know, that's every Tuesday and Sunday night. Let's hang out. Okay.
Why do they always ruin all the things I like? Hi, my name is Sydney, welcome back to Hell. And as per usual, before we launch in, today's video is sponsored by Foom. Now, I think it's pretty well established at this point that society has experienced a major shift in what it considers beautiful and attractive in the last number of years. And
but has society, the question is, has society actually determined that, or is it what the media is telling you? Because there is something, this is something that I've always had a problem with when it comes to opining about pop culture. I think the word is what I'm looking for, because you'll have a lot of the opiners talking about how the mainstream doesn't care about you and they aren't giving you what you're asking for, but then they'll continually use the mainstream as a feel for what the regular person wants. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure that the mainstream is really a good feel for what regular people want. And that's also having to do with like what I've been reading that is being mainstream published. Like right now we're finishing up, or we just finished up, Library of the Dead by T.L. I can never remember his name. But that was published in 2021 by Tor Books, which is a very big publisher. Now, I have my own cynical beliefs as to why and how that book got published and the quality that it is. I also just read Slay recently, which is going to have a book review on this channel, and I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Meets Wakanda as a video game. It's as painful as it sounds. But those are mainstream. And there's always this continual leaning on, this is what the mainstream is putting out, this is what culture is. But where is the reaching for something that is not being moved by the mainstream? Because we know that the mainstream is taking things to fit into a certain peg. You're either a brand name like Stephen King or Dean Koontz, you know, somebody that's going to sell based on name alone, already have it, or you're a social cause, or political issue based writer, or you are a trope seller, or you're super big, like it's a flash in the pan sales, like what you see on TikTok, what happened with Lightlark, where it was like immediately sold. There are a lot of books that are actually initially on Wattpad or on even fanfic.net or different fanfic websites, and then they are picked up, or obviously with TikTok, with sales, with like Lightlark, and they're picked up because of the steam around those, because of the attention going around those. But because it is a flash in the pan thing, the publishers want to get those books out as fast as possible while the readership is still hot for them, so they don't get the attention that is necessary. And so those are like the three things that I've seen coming out of traditional publishing. So is that really a good moniker for like what people are looking for? I don't think so. I think it is what is currently pushing things because people are focused on money and product and not necessarily on the quality. And it's the same reason that you see Marvel and Disney pushing out a new film every 2 or 3 months instead of taking their time to make something worthwhile. It's just constant product. Where it used to be, maybe there was artistic stuff involved, and now the artists are still out there. There are just fewer. Where in general, I think the artistry versus the commercial films, the market films were always like a 2080 or a 1090, but now it's just more. Anyway, I don't think that is a good barometer for what people want. Yeah, you're going to see it in the mainstream, but I think there's a level of gaslighting out there, or a level of trying to convince you that this is what the main thing is. And yeah, you're going to see ugly characters or more average looking characters, but where are the people talking about all of the not ugly characters? Because you only ever really, and this is probably the same thing that has to do with constantly seeing videos that are about bad book reviews. Like, why are there so many reviews that are critical? Because it's easier to opine or think or respond to something that wasn't up to par, to talk about something that was negative. It reminds me of, there was a conversation that I had with somebody before that talked about, well, why are so many villains redheads? Why aren't there any good guys who are redheads? But that's ignoring all of the villains that are not redheads. Like most of the mean girls, the stereotypical mean girl is blonde. But you look at this and it's somebody saying all of these villains are redheads. Well, what about all of the non-villainous redheads? Then it's the same with somebody saying, why are all of these villains disfigured? Why do all of these villains have scars? Why do all of these villains have disabilities? Can we not demonize disabilities and scarring and disfiguring? But then, like, what about all the villains that don't have scars and disfigurement and disabilities? Or it's the people going, why are all of these villains fat? Why are all of these comic relief people fat? While ignoring all of the comic relief or villains that are not fat. It, for me, feels a bit like hyperfixation, because you've decided, it's the same thing like you purchase a new car and then suddenly you're noticing how all of those other people have the same car, where before you purchased that car, you didn't see it. It feels like the same thing for me, and this hyper fixation on, oh, look at all of these regular or ugly female characters. Okay, but like, where are your videos talking about the beautiful female characters? Because it's not like they've disappeared, but nobody, I don't want to say nobody is talking about them, but the same people saying these are ugly women are not talking about all of the beautiful women in modern media. The same people are not talking about all of the ugly male characters or the ugly male options in media. Like, look at, I would say majority of the male characters, the central main characters in like Borderlands, are not attractive. But nobody is complaining about how all of these male characters are ugly. So I think there's a level of hyperfixation here because of a personal expectation.
Well, I'm not just talking about makeup and clothing, I'm also talking about whatever the hell it is that Gen Z is doing. I don't often venture onto their part of the internet, but when I do, this shift in attractiveness is—
That's how you know that you're an old person. And I say that as a fellow old person.
Happening all over the place in media, entertainment, film, and television. But one of the areas that people seem to talk about the most is video games. I actually started.
Is it really happening in TV and television? Because I feel like they're using the same actors that they've been using forever.
Writing this video with the intention of covering this whole topic in its totality, but I very quickly realized there was a lot to it. So I've broken it up, and consider this video number 1 with video number 2 and maybe more than that coming. I don't know, probably just 1 and 2. That's enough, I think. Now, about a month ago, The Gamer published an article titled "Stop Using Mods to Make Female Characters Prettier."
I should wait to comment on this until she finishes the article.
The article explains that after the release of the game Baldur's Gate 3, several mods were created to make female characters in the game more attractive.
Okay, so this is BS in general, like this article is BS in general, and the opinion of that author I want to completely disagree with, because 10 plus years ago when I was playing The Sims, I would go and download mods to make all of my characters more beautiful. Anything that I could do to make my female and my male characters more beautiful, I downloaded it, I stuck it into my folder, and I had such a massive mods folder. So it's not just a female character thing, and again, this is a hyperfixation probably on the author's point of view, by not opining on the number of women that make their male characters gorgeous. How about we talk about, there's also nothing wrong with wanting to be pleased by your creations, the time that you're spending, the things that you're spending time with, because this is, for me, the beautiful women in video games or making your characters pretty is the exact same thing as the number of women that write romance novels that make their male characters the most beautiful thing, the 6-pack, the 8-pack, the 12-inch dick, like the billionaire bad boy that only cares about you. Like, it is the same thing. And so you can't complain about this while literal female fantasies exist ad nauseum in the literary community. There are just different audiences for different things, for different books, for different video games, and people are allowed to like what they like and do what they want in their entertainment, as long as it's not like, you know, the mods. How about we're talking about the mods to make your characters more beautiful? Where is the article for this from this author about the mod that somebody did for Baldur's Gate 3 to make their character into a child so that they could make a child have sex? And they put that onto the workshop, and it got a couple hundred downloads before it was taken down. Or how about the person that wrote basically a giant thesis on how to create visuals so that you could make your character child-sized to then go into these sexual interactions with a child-sized character? Like, why aren't we talking about that? It's actually immoral to make your character a child to then go and have sex with things. It's not immoral or unethical to make your character more beautiful so that you can look at pretty things, because the humans just like to look at pretty things. Let's be real.
Specifically, Lae'zel, or however this is pronounced, and Shadowheart. Lae'zel pronunciation, right? Help me, internet.
Another one. My friend's blood not enough.
Who writes these names, bro? The author makes the argument that if people need to make female characters into the perfect woman, then they don't view these characters as a whole, but as commodities. The writer then goes on to say that if female characters need to meet impossible beauty standards in order for players to connect with them, then their value is only skin deep. Funnily enough, we've actually seen a ton of criticism around the appearances of several female protagonists, not only in the last number of years, but also in the last several months. Some notable examples are Aloy from Horizon Forbidden West, Mortal Kombat's Tanya, and Fable's new lead heroine, whose name I don't know, because although I looked on the internet didn't tell me, and then I just got sick of looking for it, and now we're gonna call her Mrs. Magoo. Even if you do a very basic online search about this topic, you will find countless articles and forums discussing why female characters are getting progressively uglier and uglier.
But are they? Like, are all of them? Or is it allowed, is a single female character allowed to be ugly? My question here would be, how much of this is feeling like characters, oh my gosh, this is getting into a whole nother issue. So female observers that lean into the representation side of things usually want the character need to be relatable, to be like them. How much of this is the opposite side of that same coin, where there is a group of male readers or consumers that want the female character to be an ideal for them, and if the character is less than that, then it's considered ugly? Because I can't say that I haven't seen men on the internet and on Twitter opining that even beautiful people, like let's go back to Margot Robbie being called a mid. So like, I've seen people that look at beautiful women and just say, oh no, that's a mid. So then where's that leave everybody else? I think that some of this might come down to personal taste and just saying, well, that girl's not to my personal taste. And I want to put that up for comparison even with the difference between, you know, Marcella and Michi and Shigemi and Billy and Daisy, where they're all very different women. Like, look at this. It is a menagerie of beautiful women, but they're beautiful in different ways. And how much of this, I mean, let's be real. The Fable Girl is unfortunate, but you're allowed to have unfortunate looking characters. So how much of this is just this idea that, well, you know, female, certain consumers that are female require a story to have a relatable character. And by relatable, they mean like them, a self-insert. Whereas certain part of the male consumership want the female characters to be their ideal version of somebody, and that's like it. And so then how much of this is being blown out of proportion? Because I want to also turn this back to like the ALA books. And I know this is kind of going everywhere, but I think that, again, it's hyperfixation. For me, I'm seeing hyperfixation that is turning something into an issue that's really a non-issue. But how much of this is the same as with the ALA books, where the ALA is saying, hey, look, there's banned books. These books are banned. There is an issue going on in this country of banned books. But you look at what's at the top of their banned books list, and out of 100,000 schools, public and private, 90,000 public schools, there have only been 155 requests to remove that book on the record. That's not even 0.5%. But we're told that there is this huge issue of censorship and banning of books in schools. And that's a hyperfixation. 155 complaints could literally just be in one county, but they don't tell us where these requests are from. And so I'm wondering about this. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't ugly characters, but is every female character at the front of a AAA game required to be a hottie? Because if you look at stuff, even like Saints Row the Third, which I liked Saints Row the Third and the Fourth, they were great. You can make your character cute, or you can make your character like a big fat chrome-colored tubby that's bald with a mustache and Sailor Moon hair. You can do what you want with that. But is every main character of a AAA game required to be sexy? But also, if you go look at Skyrim, look, I couldn't get into Skyrim because I could never make my character attractive enough to be happy with that, okay? Sometimes it just happens. Sometimes you don't get the things that you want in your character design and you just live with it, or that's not what you're playing the game for. That's fine. But so how much of this is hyperfixation? And the opposite side of the coin of relatability, make them sexy. But you're allowed to also just have some regular female characters or some ugly female characters, just like you're allowed to have ugly male characters.
People are apparently not a fan of this. At all. What I think is interesting is that the deliberate desexualization of female characters in video games has been happening already for some time. Over the years, more and more criticism has been thrown at video game creators, with particular groups demanding women be treated less like fun dolls and more like actual people. There's been some success with that, to be completely honest, but it seems like in this quest to undo the hypersexualization in video games, devs have taken things way too far in the opposite direction, to the point where people
Now, like I said, I saw this before previously in discussions about books where authors or some readers would target authors for being straight white males and saying you made that character a sex object. But if I say, hey, I made this character in a sexy job, looking sexy, is that a problem? They don't have answers for that because they only know how to attack straight white males, but not whether an idea is fine or not. It's all about the identity of the person. And so I don't think it's every sexualized character that is wrong. I think this is kind of possibly not a good way to address the arguments of the situation, because I don't think every female character is not being sexy. Like, I mean, leave it to what it is. I don't see anybody, let's just say I don't see anybody talking about the female characters in Red Dead Redemption. And that's just because, you know, things were rough in 1889.
People are beginning to think that female characters are being made deliberately uglier to not only appeal to a wider audience, but also just generally appear more realistic. And as a gamer myself, I find all of this very interesting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The uglification of female characters in video games and why this might be happening.
I would also like to just put it out there that if anybody wants to talk to me about, you know, my characters or the characters that I have with Monty and the collaborations that we're doing, the stories we're doing, the types of female characters that we have, I'm down. I'm down to talk to you, bring you some new characters, because I think one of the issues that is also existing is there are characters out there that are just stories out there that are just not being addressed. So consider that a self-promo.
And obviously, all of my normal disclaimers here, this video is by no means exhaustive. This will be covering a series of my personal opinions and theories about the topic, but if you want more information, there is a plethora of YouTube videos and articles and commentary and all sorts of things about this very topic that you can go and look at whenever you want. In 2019, a woman called Jacqueline Pavlat gave a TED Talk titled, "Where Are Her Clothes?" An analysis of women in video games. During her discussion, Pavlat tried to illustrate her primary argument, that women in video games are scantily clad for no good reason, their armor in battle games is lacking compared to their male counterparts, and developers should be trying to make these female characters more more realistic and relatable.
I gotta comment on that specifically, not because of Sydney, but because of that person. You know how many female gamers or writers I've seen that have made their male characters and they've put them in skimpy armor specifically? They're talking about the slutty armor that they put their male characters in. They're talking about how slutty their male characters are, and especially constantly the gay characters as well, is they've made them slutty gay characters that are kind of a female avatar of sorts, because it's kind of a level up from Not Like Other Girls, that you're such not like another girl that you're actually a man, but you're still a girl. But it's such BS to be like, where are her clothes? Because I've seen female gamers objectify male characters, both in video games and in RPG writing and RP writing, where they dress up their male counterparts or their male avatars in slutty clothing and slutty armor. And so that's just a non-issue. And it's hypocritical, because it's not like in a lot of these games, you can't dress the male characters up like hoes, because you can.
Only a month earlier, a similar TED Talk had been given about the voices of female characters in video games. The speaker said that she had studied several popular game franchises and determined that the vocalizations of female characters were limited to 3 primary tropes: the victim, where women cry out in pain or sadness; the sexy witch, who will kick your butt; and the girly girl, who is forced to fight.
So this is what I'm kind of talking about with female consumers kind of being meaner to female characters and only bringing them down to whatever trope that they can and focusing in on just those tropes. Again, Michi could be taken down to a trope. Shigemi could be taken down to a trope. Billy and Joey and Daisy and Marcella could all be taken down to a trope. People are freaking not gonna like that Marcella does it, like, she knows how to use a gun. She doesn't really want to. People are gonna hate that in the Westies, the men in the Westies believe that killing is against women's nature, and so they try to make it a situation where the women in their lives don't have to kill anybody because they think that it will mess them up completely on the inside in a different way than men. And so I know that's going to have issues, but the men in our stories really value the women to the point that they don't want to put them in those situations, to the point that the men believe that they should be protectors of the women, and the women thank these men by taking care of them, by wanting to listen to them. Billy doesn't argue with them unless, you know, she's like, I'm trying to take care of these other people. That's pretty much, I think, the biggest issue that she has with them is she's like, don't take Ambrose into the woods and murder him, please. This is my fault that he's here. I grabbed him by the arm to protect him from that gunfire, and now he's here. Don't kill him. And so there are a couple of reasons why they listen to Billy when she says that. But everybody can be boiled down to a couple of tropes. And it's the women that are boiling other women down to tropes and then saying, hey, because you are this thing, you are wrong. Women are the ones who look at another woman and say, hey, you don't have sex, you're a virgin. Well, now you're just a purity trope, and that's wrong. Oh, you have too much sex. Well, now you're a slut trope, and that is also wrong. Oh, you enjoy your body and you have a sexy body. Well, now you are a hoe. What is it? A thought or a sex object trope, and that's wrong. Oh, you are ugly. Well, that's the opposite of objectification. Everybody is treating you like you're ugly, and that's wrong because everybody is beautiful. It's so bad. Female characters, males and females both have issues. Men are constantly humiliated in a lot of modern fiction. I'm not going to say all modern fiction because, again, infinitives never are good. But a lot of male content or male characters for the last while humiliate, denigrate, insult in a lot of the stuff, especially with girl bosses, put a woman in a position of power, and the only reason that the man is there is to make the woman look better because she just insults and berates and belittles him, and who's also the love interest. And so, like, men and women characters have different issues, and men and women readers have different issues with the characters, and it is just so obnoxious.
All of this, she concludes, is not very inspiring, and just like Pavlat in her TED Talk, makes the argument that these tropes are not great for female representation.
With some exceptions, these are the main options. And they're, once again, not very inspiring. We have weakness, we have horror, we have sexuality, and that's it. Those are the options for being a female character.
I think that you are focusing, like hyperfixation. Again, this is hyperfixation. That's not all that there is.
Representation matters.
No, it doesn't.
We've heard this a lot, but I'm going to repeat it again. Representation matters. To see and to hear ourselves on screen humanizes us to ourselves, and it humanizes us to others.
Okay, that's not representation, that is narcissism. To say, I need to see myself on the screen, I need to see myself in this book. No, you're there for the character's story. Now, if you can associate, if you can relate to the character, if you go, oh, I've had that experience, I can feel it too, that's something else. But if you say, this character should be me, this character needs to have my experiences, this character needs to look like me, that is not relatability, that is narcissism. That is you demanding somebody else write your story. If you want you in a book, in a game, go make it yourself, which I guess some of them are doing. But also, no, that's not, representation is not somebody else writing your story. And that is not relatability. And it's such garbage take that so many of these people go up there and do TED Talks and go, my narcissism is relatability. It's not.
Funnily enough, these arguments go all the way back to 1996, when the action-adventure game Tomb Raider first hit shelves around the world. It featured gun-wielding protagonist Lara Croft, a female archaeologist tasked with fighting enemies and solving puzzles in her quest to find a precious artifact. The game was a huge success, marking Lara Croft as one of the most recognizable characters in the gaming world.
Can I just say that that was one of my favorite PC games when I was a kid, and I never once thought about Lara Croft's body. I never once thought about it as a negative. I never once thought about, oh, I wish I looked like that, or oh, that is problematic. I never once. So where are these people getting it? It's insecure narcissists.
Also sparked the beginning of the Tomb Raider franchise, giving us more games and films, and of course, plenty of arguing over Lara Croft's overall depiction and sexualization in the original game and those that came after. When Lara Croft first appeared on the scene, she was...
All I'm thinking about right now is the TikTok of the girl who went to like some gym in Japan wearing basically a sports bra and a corset and like shorty shorts and got treated like a slut. And then you're gonna tell me the sexualization of characters is the problem, that women don't wear tight clothing when they're gonna go and do something physical? Because generally, I mean, in normal situations, you want your clothing to be tight so that it doesn't get stuck on like rocks and boulders and stuff.
Criticized for her impossibly tiny waist and large breasts. Some users actually created game patches made for the express purpose of removing her clothes. Past video games in the 1980s and early 90s...
Look, people are allowed to enjoy what they enjoy. It's just what it is. There's a naked Ellis with an erection mod for Left 4 Dead 2. What are you gonna do? It just exists. Let it go.
Were not advanced enough to really sexualize characters. Although female protagonists were uncommon, those that existed were fully clothed or wearing weird space armor, I guess. But all of this changed with the advancement of graphics and technology. And after the popularity of 1996's Tomb Raider, despite the game's character model still being fairly primitive, there was concern that it would signal to developers that hypersexualized female characters were a way to bolster sales and make a mark on the industry.
I mean, yes, because hypersexualized characters sell. But also, that's not the only place that they sell. That's why romance novels, erotica novels have hypersexualized male characters on the cover generally. That's why sex in general. Oh my gosh, have you seen the thirst trap writers on Twitter that post like blurbs from their thirsty, dirty fiction? It's just sex sells. And it's just, none of these people deserve any time of day. Like, they're all sexual people. The people that are complaining about the sex are insanely sexual people.
All the majority of gamers were and still are boys and men. And we know that all of you still ooga booga at heart, even if some of you try to hide it. It's okay. Sort of. Now, by the 2000s, the conversation surrounding the hypersexualization of female characters and whether or not they existed solely as a male fantasy became a widely debated issue in the gaming world. One that has seemingly come to a head today, as demonstrated by our aforementioned TED Talks. And it seems that, in an effort to correct the perceived objectification of female characters, the pendulum has swung too far in the opposite direction. Rather than simply toning down the sexualized nature of these characters, which has already been happening for the last number of years, some feel that Western developers and designers have gone the extra mile and deliberately made these characters progressively less and less attractive. I mean, obviously, attraction is subjective, but so if they...
But you gotta answer me the question, can ugly female characters exist, or is it some political issue? And I think that this is part of one of my issues as well with the politically minded people, is everything is perceived as a political issue. Having a family is perceived as a political issue. No, everybody has a family. Back when the Avatar second movie came out in December, people were arguing about how it was a conservative movie because it had a family. However, and then they were arguing with me that if you were from a broken family, then you're obviously a left-winger, and then there's no such, then you always are going to act poorly, but also being from a broken family isn't an excuse to act poorly, but also a found family isn't a real family, and turning it into a left versus right issue when it's just humanity. People get so stuck in the politics of arguing their side versus some other side that they forget what your actual actually looking at, which is a human issue with complexities and nuances and human nature involved. And there's more to it than it's this person is ugly because it's a political move. No, maybe the character just lives in the boonies and it's a time and period where their teeth were rotted because they didn't have dental hygiene, and they're physically bodied person, so they've got like a swimmer's build because they're constantly on the move and they've built those muscles out since they were a child. There are different reasons for different designs. Character design is that. Now that's not to say that there aren't malicious actors involved in some of these choices, because you can also see that, but not every choice is a politically motivated choice. And so I think some of this hyperfixation on everything being political has come into that.
This uglification, for lack of a better word, is happening deliberately. The next question is why? There's a lot of data and information and writings and opinions relating to the sexualization of female characters, but when it comes to this particular topic, what might be guiding game developers and graphic designers and so on and so forth, there's very little in the way of qualitative information. So in the interest of accuracy, I just want to make note of the fact that the majority of the things that I have to say in this video are my personal observations and theories. Nothing concrete, unfortunately. Except my desire to see the resurrection of babe characters with amazing grip strength. Not like that, you weirdos.
I mean, we can talk though. I can't say all the my female characters are general. I mean, Joey is scrappy, okay? She is scrappy, and she tries to take on a man who is much larger than her and has the results that you would think. But she is scrappy at the very least. If you want to talk about female characters, let's go.
Now, first and foremost, I do think there is something to be said about the integration of more women in the gaming industry as both developers and designers. And to be clear, I do not bring this up to suggest that all women in these industries operate the same way or to tar them with the same brush, but what I'd like to do is hypothesize some of the psychology that might be driving some of these game developers.
Okay, so that's also something that I wanted to talk about as well, because it's something that I think is also causing antagonism between the different people. And that's this idea that it's because females, now that's not to say that there aren't vindictive females, because obviously I've said before in this, the relatable female, representation female, kind of the meanest female that there is, because she's going to judge every female character for not being her. That is a problem. But I've also seen the opinion floating around on this topic that it's because all females suck. It's because specifically all Western females cannot have a pretty female character. And it ignores every female author, every female creator who does create beautiful female characters, who does appreciate female femininity and female approach and the gentleness and the healing nature and these different approaches. They are all ignored, which is one of the reasons why I felt the need to make this video, because as a creative, my direction is constantly ignored, and then it's washed with this horror of the rejection of these types of characters. And then I'm told that I don't exist, or that Monty doesn't exist. And there are many people that are creating in these types of worlds that are not being seen, because instead you get this and you get people saying, oh, well, I'm only going to read from, 50 years plus ago, or from Japan, because American or Western women can't deal with beautiful women. Okay, but like, where is the attention to my beautiful women? Oh, because I don't exist. So it's kind of offensive. It is very offensive, actually, to be a creative and have people telling you what you are not creating when you are literally creating it. So maybe that's why I'm really here.
In 1989, about 30% of the video game industry was female, with the majority of those women holding low-ranking positions. Only 3% were actual developers. Today, this number has jumped to about 30% worldwide, with a further 8% saying they're non-binary or two-spirit or trans, which is honestly just like, case closed. This answers everything. But the sex of developers alone does little to explain why they might be giving us unappealing female characters. After all, we have to assume that women would likely want to see other attractive women, right?
Wrong! Some women do not want that, and some men pretend not to want that. This is why we can't have nice things.
It's worth remembering that we are all a product of our time. Female developers in the 80s and 90s were not only a completely different generation, being baby boomers and Gen Xers, but they also grew up largely with different technology and different messaging around attractiveness and beauty. Games were so basic at the time that, like I mentioned, there really wasn't a lot of room to sexualize anything. There were some significant limitations on what could and couldn't be produced, and likely what people were prepared to produce. Today's developers are millennials and Gen Z, generations who were exposed to the body shaming of the 2000s that deemed women like Jessica Simpson, Tyra Banks, and America Ferrera fat. In the 2000s, women were
But it's not just women. It's the men that call beautiful women mid. It's the other women that call other women mid when they're beautiful. It's also, there's lies going either way. There are lies from women that look not as supermodel-y, calling them beautiful, and there are people that are looking at the beautiful women calling them mid. So there is no winning, and it is men and it is women. And there's also a lack of exploration or allowing women to just be flawed, whether it is not being supermodel hot, whether it is having emotional breakdowns, whether it is being supermodel hot. Like, where are the people actually looking at the creations of today that are exactly what they're looking for? They're not there, and then they say that they don't exist. Yes, I am pissed off. I'm actually pissed off by these types of issues because they're solved and nobody is paying it, and none of the complainers are paying attention that this is actually resolved. Or that and the people complaining often don't reach out to go and find content that is actually being created that could change things to the way that they are talking.
Are subjected to fairly specific representations of what was attractive and what was not. Most of us were exposed to movies and television shows like Bridget Jones's Diary, Love Actually, and Sex and the City that routinely referred to pretty normal-looking women as chunky or plus-sized. Not to mention, society was becoming increasingly comfortable with the hypersexualization of practically everything, and I have to imagine, at least to some extent, that video games were a representation of these societal standards. Like, yes, all of those things, very bad, but one of the most shameful things we did during this period of time was put too many clothes on top of other clothes. Like, I don't know why Lizzie McGuire is over here wearing 5 shirts. Screw diet culture. Curb your spending habits.
Are we really like talking about opining on women and then making women feel a certain way while still opining on women in style and making women in style feel a certain way? Not to be that guy, but like, some people like layers.
Early 2000s was a cursed era for many young women and men, and it set the stage for the pushback that would roll around a short time later in the mid-2010s as the body positivity movement picked up some serious steam. All of this seemed to have culminated in the intense desire to see what many considered normal women in media and entertainment. No more waif-thin supermodels, but everyday relatable women and girls. And then this gave way, I guess, to whatever the hell we're looking at and seeing and being exposed to today with fat acceptance and all this type of stuff, and I hate it here. And also, just to be clear, this period of time didn't exclusively shame women's bodies. It definitely did that to men as well, but I think a core component to this conversation is that men and women perceive that shaming completely differently, which we'll come back to a little later. Now, with all of this in mind, a population of body-traumatized young men and women went on to enter the creative fields. And I think it's clear from media and entertainment today that a portion of these people were invested in the promotion of not only normal bodies, but their bodies. I think this is important to note because there is something about this group of people that means they want to see themselves and their social initiatives reflected in media. Not to mention, reportedly over 40% of gamers are female today, so there seems to be a strong emphasis placed on making media that appeals to them. To us. Although, you know, I probably should say that I don't know what kind of gamers these statistics are including in their analysis and whatnot, but I do have to say that, you know, maybe this is including things like The Sims, and if you play The Sims, you're not a gamer. Fight me. Yeah, you Sims people, I am talking directly to you, into your face. Yeah. Now, couple all of this with a few decades of intense criticism towards hypersexualized, scantily clad female characters, and it kind of makes sense why there's this intense desire to remove these perceived sexist tropes from media.
But see, okay, so that's, I gotta go back to, she's talking about the perceived sexual tropes and responding to these physically insecure, sexually insecure female creators, designers, whatever, while also having judged the styles and the women of the 90s, because women are the meanest critiques of other women in the way that they give the way that they present themselves, the way that they act, whether or not you fit into a certain manner of acting or being, and if you're considered too mannish or not man enough, or if you're too androgynous, or if you are too effeminate, it's always, oh, you like pink? You're Elle Woods? You're Legally Blonde? Well, you are disgusting. Oh, you are a tomboy? Oh, well, you are disgusting. Oh, women. I think I talked about this in my last video talking about relatability. Women are so trashed on for specifically being anything because of other women, especially saying, why are you like that? Why are you like that? Why are you like that? And it's the reason why I think the pick me girl and the not like other girls tropes and the average girl trope of like Twilight fame got so popular, because they didn't want to be what they were told to be. But people have taken it to such an extent that I think there are many girls that are so physically insecure with themselves that they don't want to be girls because everybody is telling them what they have to be as a girl, and that everything that you do as a girl is wrong. So then why be a girl? And even here, it's looking at those layers. I like wearing layers. I don't dress like Lizzie McGuire, but I like wearing layers.
And this seems to have resulted in a few things. For starters, many new characters have been designed to meet realistic beauty standards, and existing characters have been downgraded to be less sexualized and overall less sexually appealing. Sometimes these changes are actually executed well, as in the case of Lara Croft. She's been given more clothes and her body has been adapted to look more normal, but she's still very attractive, just to be clear there. The same really can't be said for characters like Aloy from Horizon Forbidden West and several Mortal Kombat characters. When Horizon Forbidden West was first teased in 2021, the game's main character Aloy was immediately criticized for her new physical appearance. Many people
I don't see the problem here. She's a cute girl. She's fine.
Felt that she looked overall less appealing. And personally, having played both Horizon games, this is an assessment that I agree with, although I would say that like no one in those games is particularly attractive, but it's hard to put a finger on why that is exactly.
How can you even complain about that if literally none of the characters in the game are physically attractive? Look, it looks like she was running around in the desert. I don't know anything about this game because I haven't played it. But what is wrong with her appearance? She's not ugly. She's a normal girl. She looks like a warrior. She looks like somebody who lives outside. Her hair is messy because she was just on a beast. Like, I do not see the problem here. Not every female character has to be a knockout. So this is going in the exactly opposite direction of making every character ugly by saying every character, every female character has to be beautiful. You can have in-betweens.
In an attempt to defend her new appearance, the usual suspects jumped in to argue that makeup doesn't exist in a post-apocalyptic world, she lives in a hot climate, which is why she's blushy, and even that she's eating more food now, that she's beaten the machines in the first game. I'm not kidding, that is a real thing that people have said, and I don't know what I'm doing here anymore. Regardless, it's clear that someone made a decision to change her appearance when there was no meaningful reason to do so, and honestly, not enough time had passed in the game world between games 1 and 2. It had been about 6 months. I don't know why she looks so different. They also gave her a single same-sex love interest in the game's DLC, and that makes me think that maybe they made her ugly on purpose so that she could be a lesbian.
How is that ugly? She's so cute. What the frick?
Same-sex love interest in the game's DLC. And that makes me think that maybe they—
That is cute. That is a cute character design.
made her ugly on purpose so that she could be a lesbian. Where's the lie? Sydney, please! Mortal Kombat 1 also experienced similar treatment. The recent release of the game's trailer sparked a tremendous amount of criticism with relation to several characters, most notably Tanya, and the criticism came from 2 fronts. One, it was noted that Tanya's previous appearance had been scrapped. Her otherworldly features that made her quite beautiful were gone, and she looks nothing like her earlier depictions. And 2, the actress on which she is based is very beautiful, and the two now look nothing alike. This of course raised a bunch of eyebrows. Why use an extremely beautiful woman if you have no intention of depicting her actual appearance?
If you're taking it as a base, as a creative person, okay, because sometimes I've used actors as a creative base, like young Jensen Ackles is what Scotty looks like, and Scotty is my character in my short story that was in the Stygian anthology. If you take that, and then as you build out the character, you kind of discover more what they look like. Again, if you go and look at my video from Thursday where I went through my art from July, as I go through the next couple of months worth of my art from August and September, you'll see Ace's appearance change as I discovered his personality more and found more and more what works for him. So from a creative standpoint, I can understand if as you are designing the character and figuring out who they are and what their personality is like, and then you go, okay, this makes more sense for them, and you deviate from that base that you started with. I can even show you on the screen right now where Ace started, kind of where he was midsection, and then what he looks like currently. And so they're all fairly different. Like his color scheme's the same. His hair got longer, but that can happen. And so I think sometimes in some of these cases, that might be the creative impetus, or it is a deliberate change to appease something. Because I've also seen in the creative community, in the writing community and publishing, that if an author or a creator creates a character, the agent might be like, well, you're not of that demographic, or that's not what is selling right now, or that's not what we want to publish. If you look at the article that I talked about in my Lucky Red collab that I did with Monty, in the article it talked about somebody doing a Western about the Chinese railroad and Chinese immigrants, and the agent had said, oh, nobody's going to be interested in that. It's too immigrant-y. So there are politics on the back end of things that can control things and censor things and make things be changed politically. But not every change is political, because you also have to take into account creative changes. Like if you look at my book Dead End Drive, it's inspired by the board game 13 Dead End Drive, but not all of the characters in there match the demographics of the characters in the board game. And that's because I made creative decisions based on the types of characters that I wanted to create, that I felt right to create. And it was more the character voices, because I write intuitively. I kind of get told who my characters are and then have to follow that. And so some of the demographics are changed. None of those were political reasons for them to be changed. They just were what they were, and then I worked with what I found. And usually as I develop the characters, I understand why they are the way they are and who they are. So that's part of a creative equation that I don't think gets taken into account when you're looking at it purely from the product side.
Something really interesting to consider here is a prevailing attitude in some radical feminist communities that basically says that in order to defy beauty expectations and standards, you have to actively abandon them. Now, obviously, I don't know how many people who work in the gaming industry consider themselves radical feminists, but I think it's plausible that at least a portion of them do. And if these developers and designers are trying to apply their personal social justice or intersectional framework to the creations they're working on, it makes sense why existing female characters are being made progressively less and less attractive. Again, the position here and the idea behind this is that women must actively uglify themselves in order to demonstrate their commitment to female female liberation. So this might explain why it feels like we've gone from one extreme to the other. These characters are either beautiful and hypersexualized, or they look like the new Fable character, and nobody can explain why. And sadly, similar to the point I made in my Disney Princesses video, this binary leaves us with very few options in between. Alongside this is the idea that a woman can't simultaneously be beautiful and strong or feminine and independent, and that underscores the subtext that surrounds this debate. A female character, a woman, can't be strong and powerful while also subscribing to standards that are viewed as oppressive. You guys
oh my gosh, this just makes me, I gotta mention Marcella. Because people might look at her as being not strong and independent, but her entire storyline, specifically for her, has to do with her constantly, she's always obeyed her father. She's been what her father wants. She's even expecting her father to find her a husband, or to set her up with a husband. I shouldn't say find her a husband, but she's expecting to be married in the same way that her parents were married, and that someday she will be given a husband, because that's what she's been primed to do. And then she meets Tommy, and she is actually given the chance, because Tommy comes to her window and says, and knows that Christopher Maxim is on the property, and that she is going to be given to Christopher Maxim. And Tommy says, do you want to come with me, or do you want to stay here? And her going with him is an act of rebellion against her father and her choosing for herself. And then she runs away with him, and her father chases after her and is going to kill Tommy and the people that she's with until she makes the determination to turn herself back into her father to keep the people that she loves safe. But even in doing that, she says, I'm going to go to my father and tell him that I love you and I'm going to marry you, and I am not going to marry who he wants me to marry. Of course, she doesn't have the foothold that she thinks that she might have when she goes in. So her dad is like, yeah, no, you're a silly girl and you don't get that decision. As soon as you get married, you'll get used to your wife duties, and then you'll get over your stupid feelings, because that's all that this is silly feelings. But she continues to try to find a way to communicate outside of her household, outside of her dad and her now husband, to get back to the man that she loves, because that's who she wants to be with. And is this the type of strength that it's talking about? I don't think so. But that is a type of strength for her perseverance, to try to defy her father, to get what she actually wants in life, to make that decision for herself, to go back and leave Tommy, her new husband, to go back to her father and find out who her father really is, and then to escape her own father because she wants to be with the man that she loves. That is still strength. And the things that she has to do in order to get back to Tommy, that is a kind of strength. It's not every kind of female strength, but that is feminine and that is strength, that character. Daisy is feminine and she is strong. She has such heart. She goes through such hardship. She has such perseverance. She has a calming nature. She is funny, she sacrifices herself, and she does everything that she possibly can. She gets captured by the Pinkertons and gets tortured for the location of Marcella, and she does not give it up. That's strength. But she is also feminine. She also, punches somebody in the face for messing up her dress. But she also tames horses with her kindness, with her spirit. And that's what Ace falls in love with as he gets to spend time around her. And that's what he wants. Billy is soft-spoken. She hardly talks at all. She's almost practically a mute. But she shows her strength through the times that she does speak, through the times that she touches people, like pulling Ambrose out of the train station and onto the horse with her, of how she is with him in comforting him and giving him confidence so that he can be the man that he wants to be. And then he becomes the leader to her. That is strength. And there is strength in many different ways. It is not just the singular type of strength or singular type of femininity, because all of these girls have different types of strengths. Joey is self-sacrificial. She is brave to the level of stupidity and suicide. She is suicidally brave and devoted, let's be real. But that's what her strength is. And it's because of that she is able to help Wayland move on. Her femininity is also tomboyish. So there are so many different ways to do this. And Sydney here is saying that there's nowhere to look for these people, these characters that are either between super hot, sexy, whatever, or super ugly, sexy, whatever. But I think the issue really comes down to looking at everything political and forgetting that these characters are people. Stories are not just political items to be used to brainwash people into thinking one way or another, or in order to taunt people. But I think the hyper-politicization of all of these industries and the hyperfixation of politics has made some people forget that humans are humans. It's all about human story. These political issues come down to human choices that have to do with background and experience And there's so much more out there than just the extreme one way or the extreme other way. And it is a disservice to characters. It is, in my opinion, disrespectful to characters to minimize them into just being a political tool. And that goes to the devs and the writers who only see characters as political tools. In the same way that it also, if you use a character to just be a sexual get-off toy, that includes women who do that to male characters. It's the same level of disgusting. These are people.
You might think that I am lying about this as an ideology, but a radical feminist once told me to my face that wearing high heels is a tool of the patriarchy. I was like, lady, I'm 5'11". If I wear high heels and then stand in a room full of average-sized men, I am the patriarchy. Anyway, this...
Also, you have to remember, I know that's a joke, but it's probably also real, but it's probably also a joke. With the internet, everybody has an opinion. The guy who believes a banana is sentient also has as much of a say as you, and you just have to accept that some people are crazy, and they at the end of the day, they don't matter. It's the same way that as an artist myself, if I get a negative review, if I get a critical review, if I get a review that says something completely untrue about what it is that I've done, or if I get a comment about what it is I've done, you just have to ignore it because some people just miss it, and that's fine. There's nothing you can do, but not all opinions are equal. I think we should be able to agree on that, right?
This was an attitude that I came into contact with again and again while researching for this video. The need for realism and the inability to suspend disbelief when it comes to hot, skilled, badass female characters. I think it's fair to say that both men and women approach and perceive realism and fantasy very differently.
But isn't it the same people that got mad at Adam, whatever it was, Adam Blonde? The more recent badass female character, because I hate girl bosses. But, like, I don't understand this because, like, there are so many hot, sexy female characters that are also girl bosses in literature. So where is this coming from? Because, like, Isla, super sexy. She's basically from the succubus tribe. She wears basically leaves and petals that just fall off of her as she walks. She's ignorant to how beautiful she is. She literally eats people's hearts. The same thing with Pawn and the Puppet. There's so many that are just sexy. Where is this coming from? Okay, now I'm starting to be like, video games and book people are like, guys, okay, just prepare yourselves. If books are ahead of what's happening in video games, then you will get sexy people in video games in about 5 to 10 years because the books are filled with sexy girl bosses. But I don't think that sexy girl bosses are out. Like Bayonetta, is Bayonetta still doing new stuff? Because that was an entire game of just sexy girl bosses, wasn't it?
While I was researching for this video, I listened to several female speakers and read countless articles and studies that mention the same thing over and over again. Women want to see realistic depictions of female characters. One 2021 article stated, female players are constantly fed unrealistic body proportions, outfits, and armor. It can be difficult to become truly immersed in a video game world where you don't feel respected or welcome. Most of these articles focus specifically on female characters, and there isn't much mention when it comes to men, despite the fact that male characters are still subject to the same standards when it comes to unrealistic body proportions and outfits. Even the article I referenced at the beginning of this video admits that this double standard exists, acknowledging that mods exist across plenty of games that make men shirtless. I guess that men don't really care about that because I'm like 98% sure that most men enjoy seeing other men shirtless. I go to the gym too, guys. I see whose muscles you're checking out, and it's typically not us. At least I'm coming after everyone equally today. Another writer, again in 2021, also expressed sadness around the attractiveness of female characters, writing, "We should be saddened every time controversies over the relative attractiveness of female characters arise. We saw how out of hand things got last year in reaction to The Last of Us Part 2 having female protagonists who didn't have typically feminine bodies. The reality is that women, and more broadly people, come in every shape and size, and they are under no obligation to beautify themselves to appease strangers. We deserve the option to consume media that reflects that." This writer is referencing controversy surrounding The Last of Us Part 2's character Abby, who is muscular and probably not one that a lot of people would consider feminine. Abby did produce a lot of negative feedback, but this likely could be attributed more to the fact that The Last of Us Part 2 did an enormous disservice to the first game, made her character kill another beloved character, and then forced players to play as her for the rest of the story. So with that said, while Abby is
I would say that would put a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
Not stereotypically attractive, people disliked her for a host of additional reasons. And as far as real representations go, I think it's fair to say here that your average woman absolutely doesn't look like this. It's not to say that a designer can't create an Abby-like character because so few women like this exist out in the world, but if the point is to represent normal body types, even this isn't normal. And I suppose that's part of the issue with the representation of females in games. We're still not being given normal women, and to be fair, how could we possibly? Nothing about gaming is realistic or normal. And
but can't you create, this is a normal woman right here. This is a normal woman. Actually, she's really cute. But Isn't in Baldur's Gate, you create your own character, so you can make your character just plain if you want to make your character plain. There are so many games, and also Skyrim. Again, I tell you, Skyrim, I couldn't make a beautiful character in that game. Maybe I didn't mess around with it enough, but I couldn't make a cute enough character for me to want to actually play it, aside from, you know, it's just not my genre at all. But I don't see the issue here. I just see it as hyperfixation. And yeah, there are a lot of people that are stupid, that are complaining about hot female characters. I see it all the time in the writing community. I see people arguing and critiquing stuff that doesn't matter. Oh, this book has a hot female character. Oh, this book has a virginal female character. Everybody is going to have an opinion in the same way that I'm going to have opinions on stuff on all of my book reviews that other people disagree with, because it's the internet. Everybody can have an opinion. It's just the problem of pretending that if you Google something and then see somebody that says something, then that means that it is a popular opinion or that it is more serious than it actually is, when it's literally just a person on the internet with an opinion. Just like me, just like Sydney. It's not that big an issue, which is why I think it's also important to kind of have the discussions to sort of meter how things are not that serious.
Don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad thing. The ability to play as a highly skilled, extremely attractive person is part of the enjoyment of these games. For some, it offers a level of escapism. Things don't always have to be realistic or make sense. And for whatever reason, devs and designers seem to find this rationale perfectly acceptable when it comes to male characters, many of whom are also sexualized, unclothed, and extremely unrealistic as far as their bodies and appearances go. Even male players themselves are fine with this, given that these characters are potentially a fantasy of what men want to be: strong, often handsome, armed to the teeth, and skilled in all sorts of combat situations. They are something to aspire to, and therefore, the user experience is more enjoyable because these are characters that men can actually emulate. And not only that, but I think men are better with escapism and fantasy in general. Obviously, we don't really know why that is. Chalk it up to men are from Mars and women are from Venus or something. One last thing that I would like to note.
I want to say, so men and women can and do create fiction differently and absorb fiction differently. But I don't think that that is the exact accurate way to put it, because I also think that City and I experience fiction in very different ways as well. And not to be like I'm not like other girls, but I've had issues with seeing things and experiencing things like other girls because I don't have the same emotionality as other girls. But I don't think that it is this binary that is being created of this is how most are and this is how most are. And I know that she's generalizing and also says she's not covering everything. But I think that in some of this discussion, it's way too easy to generalize in a way that then creates resentment of one against the other, when that's not exactly what is going on.
Before I round out this video and finish it off, is that in my travels of the internet, when I was reading the comments of other gamers, I noticed that some of them called out the double standard that exists when it comes to ugly male characters. There are a lot of them, and how people are very unfazed by this. While this observation is definitely true, I think this can be chalked up overall to the fact that there are just more male characters in any and all video games. This means that there are greater opportunities for all different sorts of characters, not to mention the fact that we interpret male and female attractiveness in different ways. So given the fact that we have so few female protagonists, when one is made ugly, whether she existed previously or is a new creation, we notice. We can't help but notice. With that said too, I don't deny that this means that there is a lack of range for these female characters. But I am probably not the woman to ask, because personally I am totally fine with playing as very attractive gaming characters who are just really good at climbing walls. I like the badass boss babes. I think they're pretty great, and unlike other entertainment mediums, this is one of the areas where I don't need things to be realistic for it to be enjoyable.
But are you okay with an average or just a cute female character or even an ugly female character instead of it being a super hottie? Because you can be super ugly male characters and nobody bats an eye. Because all you're saying is that you will be a hot one. But what about an average one?
Finally, while I understand and appreciate the desire to tone down some of the hypersexuality in video games, I also don't think that the quest for realism is necessary. And in the end, I think it undermines what makes games so fun and exciting in the first place: our ability to disconnect and experience something that we don't get in our everyday lives. Now, open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Are video game characters, particularly female ones, actually getting more unattractive? Do you think that this is deliberate? Do you think that it's not happening and people are blowing this way out of proportion? What do you make of some of the criticisms and arguments surrounding this topic, like the Fable heroine, or Aloy, or even some of the Mortal Kombat characters? Do you think this matters? Do you think it doesn't matter? Do you think that it's giving us an indication of where we are heading generally as far as entertainment goes? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always,
I think that there's a blindness involved in this if you think that the Aloy character looks the same as the Fable character. Because I would say the Fable character is actually closer to looking like a character from Shrek, and Aloy is actually just a cute female character. She's not sexy. She's cute though. She's not ugly. And so if you think that those two characters look the same because they're not a mega hottie, that is a personal blind spot. But that would be my opinion on that. For me, I think some of it is deliberate. I think there are obviously and very proudly people out there that say, I want ugly female characters because they personally see themselves in there. It's the same group of people or a similar group of people as the readers who want to see themselves as that character in a book. And if they don't see themselves in the character in the book, then it's a failure. Or it's the same thing with seeing them on TV. Again, look back at my video from last Saturday, or 2 Saturdays ago, talking about relatableness and how that writer was talking to her friends and her friends were saying those female characters aren't like me, so they're hard to relate to. That's a completely different issue. That I think is a narcissistic issue where people are sort of getting used to not seeing the world as other people, but want other people to see the world as themselves. And it's a much bigger issue than what's in fiction. I think that there's a lot of pressure on female characters to perform a certain way, to be a certain way. And the double standard in this situation is that you're okay with ugly male characters or regular male characters. But if it is a non-attractive female character or just a cute female character, then that becomes a problem instead of it just not being a fantasy. Because not every male character in a story is a fantasy. A lot of them are, but a lot of female characters are also fantasy. So I think there's a blind spot in here. I also think that it is addressing political reasons behind every decision while not considering creative reasons behind those decisions. I think some things even start out as a creative reason and then maybe somebody takes over and then changes it into a political reason when it hadn't been a political reason before. So I think there are a lot more things going on here than just making it a singular thing and saying, well, all characters are getting ugly. I also think there's a hyperfixation on trying to control other people's properties, whether it's to make them uglier or to make them beautiful. And yeah, fans have a say in some things, but I also think that fans can have a level of entitlement where they think other people should kowtow to what they're doing. And so you have the people that say, make these characters gay and demanding that the creators kowtow to what they want. At the same time, you've got these people over here saying, make these characters all beautiful and sexy and whatever. And the creator has to stick true to what their vision is as opposed to chasing either way. It's one thing to create fan service. It's another thing to take inspiration from the way that your fans are responding and to do justice to the content that the fans fell in love with. It's another thing to let fans guide the way the story goes. And that includes like what happened to the Arrowverse. But not everything is a political decision, just like not everything is a creative decision. There needs to be more discussion and more nuance and more understanding and less blame and like forcing this knife into things to say that it is because of women, it is because men, it is because these things. As a creative person and as a character-driven writer that puts so much thought into the creation of my characters and knowing how they interact and building characters that are specific to their circumstances and who they are, and you can see it in how they live and how they look. It's just painful to me to hear somebody look at another person and only see a political drive for that. So hey, maybe there's a possibility of having a discussion on creativity and character design. Hopefully this gave you something else to think about from the creative side of things, because I don't talk about the political side of things. I don't like to look at things from a political side of view. I like to look at them from a creative side of view and keep it there. So maybe you'll check out some of my book reviews. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Have a great weekend and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore. but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?